I'm Henry Dalton, and I want to know you're here with me. Just drop a comment saying, listening, or tell me where you're tuning in from. Your support means everything, and it helps stories like mine reach people who need to hear them. Now, let me take you back to the night everything changed. The crystal glasses clinked like tiny bells across the dining room at Romano's. Everyone wore their best smiles that evening. My father had reserved the entire back room to celebrate what he called a family triumph. The business award sat in the center of the table, reflecting candlelight like a golden trophy. Tom, my younger brother, stood up slowly, tapping his glass with a butter knife. The room fell silent. I want to thank everyone for believing in my vision, he said, his voice smooth and confident. The logistics system that saved our company from bankruptcy? That was my innovation. My late nights. My calculations. My risk. I felt my chest tighten like someone had wrapped steel cables around my ribs. Those were my blueprints. My sleepless months. My calculations scribbled on napkins at 3 in the morning. Everyone clapped. My mother beamed with pride. My father nodded approvingly. Tom's eyes found mine across the table, and he smirked. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice cracked like thin ice. Tom, that's not exactly. My father raised his hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. Henry, please. Not tonight. Let your brother have his moment. I stood up slowly, my napkin falling to the floor. Nobody picked it up. Nobody even looked at me. I walked out into the cold parking lot, my hands shaking uncontrollably. This time, I thought, staring at the dark sky, he's gone too far. Driving home that night, memories flooded back like a broken dam releasing decades of water. Tom stealing credit wasn't new. It wasn't even surprising. It started when we were just kids in elementary school. I built the science fair volcano, spending weeks perfecting the chemical mixture. Tom presented it and won first place. I wrote the essay that won the district writing competition. Tom accepted the certificate while I sat in the audience. I trained him every morning for basketball tryouts, teaching him footwork and shooting form. Tom made the varsity team while I sat on the bench, watching. Every single time it happened, I told myself it didn't matter. Family came first. Keeping peace was more important than personal pride. But tonight felt different. Tonight, he didn't just take credit for a school project. He took my career, my professional identity, my proof that I mattered in this world. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Mom appeared on the screen. Tom tells me you're confused again. Please don't start anything. Confused. I stared at those words until the light turned green and a car honked angrily behind me. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. Just a clean break, like ice splitting on a frozen lake in winter. I wasn't confused. For the first time in my 38 years of life, I was finally seeing everything clearly. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Patterson's sterile office. He closed my medical file and looked at me over his reading glasses with concern etched across his face. Your blood pressure is dangerously high, Henry. The stress is literally killing you. If you don't make changes soon, we're looking at serious cardiovascular problems. I sat there under the buzzing fluorescent lights, feeling numb. I'm managing, I said weakly, but even I didn't believe my own words. No, you're not managing, Dr. Patterson said firmly, leaning forward with his elbows on his desk. You need to cut toxic relationships out of your life. I don't care if they're family members. Your health depends on making hard choices. He paused, letting his words sink in. Henry, you're only 38. You shouldn't be on blood pressure medication. You shouldn't wake up with chest pains. Something needs to change. I drove home in complete silence, his words echoing in my head like a warning siren. Toxic relationships. Family. Health. Hard choices. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick away the seconds. Every hour felt like judgment. At exactly 3 in the morning, my phone screen lit up the dark bedroom. An email from Tom's assistant, Brenda. Hi Henry, Tom needs your private notes on the new supply chain project for his presentation next week. Can you send them by Friday? Thanks. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Not a request. A demand. A command. He wasn't even pretending anymore. He just expected me to hand over my work like a servant delivering a meal. I stared at that email until sunrise broke through my curtains, my decision forming slowly but solidly, like concrete setting in a foundation. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning with my laptop open and a cup of coffee growing cold beside me. I typed a reply to Brenda, then deleted it. I rewrote it 3 more times, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I settled on something simple and clear. Hi Brenda, I'm unable to share those files. They contain proprietary material I'm developing independently for potential clients. Best regards, Henry. I hit send before I could change my mind or second-guess myself. 30 minutes later, my phone exploded with Tom's incoming call. His name flashed across the screen like an accusation. I took a deep breath and answered. What the hell, Henry? His voice was sharp and angry, cutting through the line like a knife. I needed those notes for the presentation. What's your problem? They're mine, Tom, I said calmly. My work. My intellectual property. You're being sensitive and childish. This is ridiculous. I'm being clear. Those are my files, my ideas, and I'm not sharing them. After everything this family has done for you? Tom's voice rose higher. You're ungrateful. You know that. You're selfish and ungrateful. I stayed silent, forcing myself to remain calm. For the first time in decades, I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't making excuses to keep the peace. If you won't help me, Tom hissed, his voice dropping to something cold and threatening, I'll make sure they all think you're losing it. I'll make sure everyone knows you're unstable. The line went dead. I set my phone down carefully on the table. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt strangely light, like I'd been carrying a massive boulder on my back for years and had finally dropped it. Over the next several days, I started thinking differently about everything. Tom relied on me completely. He needed my brain, my systematic process, my analytical work. But he pretended he didn't, maintaining the illusion that he was the genius. That pretense was his fundamental weakness. I wasn't going to sabotage him. That wasn't who I was as a person. But I could protect myself. I could redirect my skills and knowledge toward something he couldn't touch or steal. I opened my old folder of business contacts and client information. People I'd helped over the years. Clients who knew my name but never saw me take public credit for the work. I started drafting careful emails, keeping them professional and humble. Hi, I'm exploring independent consulting opportunities in logistics optimization. If you're interested in discussing potential projects, I'd love to connect. I sent 12 emails that week to former clients and industry contacts. 7 people responded within 48 hours, which shocked me. One message particularly stood out from the rest. It was from a former client named Vincent Shaw, someone I'd helped 3 years ago. Your brother pitched your warehouse routing idea to us last quarter, he wrote. But honestly, the presentation didn't make sense without you there to explain it. Are you available to consult directly? We'd pay well for your expertise. I read that message 3 times, my heart pounding in my chest. Not from stress this time. From validation. From concrete proof. Tom had been selling my ideas to clients, passing them off as his own brilliance. And people knew. They'd known all along. I started documenting everything I'd ever created. Not for revenge. Not for some future lawsuit. Just for clarity, for truth, for my own sanity. I pulled up old emails and sorted them chronologically by date and project. I found drafts of proposals I'd written, all time-stamped months before Tom's polished presentations. I found detailed workflows I'd designed, client feedback I'd personally received, complex problems I'd solved alone in my home office. I didn't hide these documents. I didn't make secret copies or use encrypted files. I just organized them systematically. Cleanly. Professionally. Everything was already mine anyway. One quiet afternoon, my niece Casey came over to my house. She was Tom's 12-year-old daughter, smart as a whip and curious about everything. She sat at my kitchen table doing her math homework while I cooked dinner for us both. "Uncle Henry," she said casually, not looking up from her textbook, "Dad said he's presenting your project to Grandpa tomorrow at the office." Her pencil kept moving across the page, solving equations. I froze completely, my hand stuck on the stove dial. "What project, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and normal. "The delivery thing. You know, the one with all those colorful maps you showed me last month when I was here. The one you stayed up late working on." She still wasn't looking at me, completely innocent and unaware she'd just handed me a bomb with a lit fuse. "Oh," I said quietly, carefully. "That one." I turned back to the stove, but my mind was racing at incredible speed. Tomorrow. He was doing it again. Tomorrow morning, he'd present my work as his own. Again. The family meeting was held the next day in my father's study. Dark mahogany wood paneling. Leather chairs that smelled like old money. The lingering scent of expensive cigars. Tom stood at the front with a projector screen, clicking through slides with smooth confidence. My slides. My maps. My data. My months of work. But something was immediately wrong. He stumbled badly over the technical terminology. He mixed up the key metrics. When my father asked a specific question about projected cost savings, Tom gave an incredibly vague answer. "It's all about efficiency and optimization," Tom said, waving his hand dismissively like details didn't matter. My father frowned, clearly unsatisfied. "But how does the routing algorithm actually decide priority between deliveries?" Tom blinked, caught off guard. "Well, it's automated. The system handles it." "Automated how exactly?" my father pressed. "What's the underlying logic?" Silence filled the room like thick smoke. My grandfather, sitting quietly in the corner leather chair, looked directly at me with knowing eyes. "Henry, you've been awfully quiet. What do you think about this system?" I cleared my throat carefully. The algorithm prioritizes deliveries based on density mapping and time windows. It uses a weighted matrix model that balances multiple variables simultaneously. Tom's face went bright red. My father leaned back in his chair, studying me intently. "Go on, son." I explained the missing technical piece clearly, kindly, humbly, without directly attacking Tom or making accusations. But the room understood immediately. The atmosphere shifted. After the meeting ended, my grandfather pulled me aside in the hallway. He put his weathered hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. "Son," he whispered so only I could hear, "I know. I've always known." Tom found me in the parking lot an hour later, his footsteps angry and quick on the pavement. "You made me look like a complete idiot in there," he said, his voice shaking with rage. I unlocked my car without looking at him. "I just answered Grandpa's question honestly, Tom. That's all I did. You sabotaged me deliberately. You want to be the golden boy so badly it's pathetic." I finally turned to face him, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I don't want to be anything special, Tom. I just want to do my work without someone else taking credit for it." "That's bullshit and you know it. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me, of what I have, of how people see me." I didn't respond to his accusations. For the first time in decades, his angry words didn't penetrate. They bounced off me harmlessly like small stones hitting solid armor. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, his voice dropping to something low and threatening. "Fine then. Don't expect me to stop what's coming next. You think you embarrassed me today? Just wait." He walked away quickly, his expensive shoes echoing on the concrete. I got in my car and sat there for a long moment with my hands resting on the steering wheel, just breathing. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was simply ready for whatever came next. 2 days later, I woke up to my phone absolutely flooded with messages. Texts, emails, voicemails. Something had happened overnight. Tom had sent a mass email to the entire family and all our key business partners. The subject line read, "Concerns about Henry's health and recent behavior." Inside, he'd written that I'd been struggling with significant memory issues and might need professional help and extended rest. He carefully suggested I was confused about project origins and timelines, and strongly recommended I take a step back from business operations for my own well-being. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. I sat on the edge of my bed, reading the email over and over, each word feeling like a punch. This wasn't just taking credit anymore. This was cruel. This was calculated character assassination. This was designed to completely destroy my professional credibility before I could defend myself. But I didn't panic. I didn't break down. I opened my laptop and carefully drafted a reply. I kept my response calm, dignified, and factual. Professional throughout. I attached 3 key documents: time-stamped drafts showing my work, emails with clients praising my contributions, and a simple timeline of my successful consulting projects. I wrote, "I sincerely appreciate the concern for my well-being, but I'm in excellent health and actively engaged in multiple successful independent projects. I'm happy to discuss my work further with anyone interested in specifics." I hit send and waited. Within 1 hour, 2 business partners messaged me privately. "Henry, we'd honestly rather work with you than Tom on future projects. Are you open to new contracts?" I stared at those messages, my heart pounding hard. Yes, I was absolutely open. Over the next month, I landed 3 solid independent consulting contracts. Real clients paying real money. Real projects where people valued my expertise. Real recognition for work with my name attached. I worked primarily from home, building detailed presentations, designing innovative logistics frameworks, solving complex problems I genuinely loved solving. I didn't brag to the family about my success. I didn't post anything on social media. I simply let the work speak quietly for itself. One evening in early autumn, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Tom standing on my front porch looking exhausted and desperate. His hair was messy. His tie was loosened. He looked nothing like his usual polished self. "I need your help on a major pitch," he said without greeting or preamble. "Tomorrow morning. Really big potential client. I honestly can't do it without your help, Henry." I stood in the doorway with my hand on the frame, blocking entry. For a brief moment, I almost said yes. Old habits die hard. Old guilt runs deep. But then I remembered his email. Confused. Memory issues. Needs professional help. Take a step back. "I can't help you, Tom," I said simply. His face twisted with emotion. "Can't or won't? There's a difference." "Both, actually." "You're seriously going to let me fail? Your own brother." I took a deep, steadying breath. "I'm not letting you fail, Tom. You're choosing this path yourself through your own actions." He stared at me, shock rapidly turning to pure rage. "Fine then. I'll see you Sunday at Mom and Dad's. And everyone there will know exactly who you really are." He turned and walked away. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing but my resolve stronger than ever before. Sunday lunch at my parents' house was tense from the moment I arrived. Everyone had gathered around the big dining table. Mom had set out the good china, the pieces from her grandmother. She'd made her famous pot roast, the one that usually made everyone happy. But nobody was eating much. Forks pushed food around plates. Halfway through the uncomfortable meal, Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "I have something important to say," he announced. The room went completely quiet. "Henry has been deliberately undermining me for months now. He's unstable. He's spiteful and vindictive. He's systematically trying to take credit for my work and destroy my reputation." I stayed seated, silent. "Come." Every eye in the room turned toward me, waiting for my reaction. My mother looked worried and confused. My father looked deeply uncomfortable. My grandfather watched me carefully with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. I didn't defend myself emotionally. I didn't yell or cry or make dramatic gestures. I just said calmly and clearly, "If you want the truth, Tom, let's show them together. Let's lay everything out right now." Tom's face went visibly pale. "What are you talking about?" I pulled a thick binder from my bag, setting it carefully on the table. "I have everything documented here. Emails, drafts, dates, Timestamps. Project files. Let's go through it together. Right now. In front of everyone. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. I opened the binder on the table, turning it so everyone could see. The first page showed a detailed email I'd sent 18 months earlier. The subject line read, Warehouse Routing Proposal, Draft 1. It was clearly addressed from my email account. Tom's face flushed deep red. Anyone can fake email dates these days, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I calmly flipped to the next page. A client email thanking me specifically and personally for the routing innovation. Then another page. Then a handwritten draft with my distinctive handwriting and notes in the margins. My father leaned forward, studying the documents carefully. My mother looked back and forth between Tom and me, confusion growing on her face. These are all dated months before Tom's big presentations, my grandfather said quietly, stating the obvious truth. Tom slammed his hand down hard on the table, making glasses rattle. He's trying to rewrite history. Can't you see that? You're all falling for his manipulation. But something fundamental had shifted in the room. People were remembering things. Incidents from years ago. Patterns they'd ignored. My cousin spoke up hesitantly from the end of the table. Tom, I actually remember you specifically asking Henry for detailed help on that award project. You spent a whole weekend at his house. Tom's eyes darted around the room desperately, looking for support. That's not, I mean yes, he helped some, but, his voice was rising, cracking. Helped. My voice was soft but firm. Or created it entirely while you watched. Tom opened his mouth to respond. Then closed it. Then his face went completely white. He grabbed the edge of the table hard. Tom, my mother said with alarm. His knees buckled and he collapsed. We rushed Tom to the hospital immediately. The emergency room doctor diagnosed a severe panic attack brought on by extreme stress. Nothing life-threatening, but he needed rest and possibly therapy. I sat in the sterile waiting room while the family whispered among themselves in tight clusters. I could hear fragments of their conversations drifting over. Did you know about this? I always wondered something was off. Poor Henry, all these years. But I wasn't angry sitting there. I wasn't even satisfied or triumphant. I just felt profoundly tired. Exhausted. When Tom was finally cleared to go home, he walked right past me in the hallway without making eye contact. My mother hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. My father squeezed my shoulder meaningfully. But nobody apologized directly. Not yet. The words hadn't come yet. That night after I got home, Tom sent me a text message, "Don't pretend you care about me. You finally got your moment of glory. Hope it was worth destroying your brother." I read it twice. Then I set my phone down without replying. I turned it off completely and went to bed, falling into the deepest sleep I'd had in years. A week later, my phone rang while I was making breakfast. It was Vincent Shaw, the business partner from my earlier consulting work. "Henry, I wanted to reach out personally. We want you to lead the new logistics division we're creating. Full leadership role. Full authority and competitive salary. Not Tom. You." I sat down slowly at my kitchen table. "I don't know if that's the right move, Vincent. The family dynamics." "It was always your work anyway," Vincent interrupted firmly. "We've known for quite a while now. This isn't charity or pity. This is honest business. You earned this." I thanked him sincerely and ended the call. But I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I felt conflicted and uncertain. If I accepted this prominent role, the family would definitely say I'd stolen Tom's rightful place. They'd paint me as the villain in this story. They'd say I orchestrated everything for personal gain. I sat there for an hour, thinking deeply. Finally, I drafted a careful email declining the generous offer. Not out of fear or guilt. Out of clarity about who I wanted to be. I wanted to build my own independent path forward. Not stand forever in Tom's shadow. Not overshadow him either. Just my own clear path. As I hit send on that email, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my mother standing there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Henry," she whispered, her voice breaking, I think I owe you a serious apology." She came inside and sat on my couch, wringing her hands nervously. For a long time, she didn't speak at all, just stared at her hands. Finally, she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "I favored Tom for years. I didn't mean to do it consciously, but I absolutely did. I see that now clearly." I sat across from her, staying silent, letting her speak. "He always seemed so fragile emotionally," she continued, her voice shaking. "And you? You were always so strong, so capable, so independent. I thought you didn't need me the way he did. I thought you'd be fine no matter what." Her voice broke completely. "I was so wrong. I hurt you terribly. I failed you as a mother." "Mom," I started, but she held up her hand. "Can you help us help him now?" she asked desperately. "Can you teach him what you know? Show him how to actually do the work?" I shook my head gently but firmly. "No, Mom. That's not my responsibility anymore. That's not my job to fix." She nodded slowly, understanding, tears still falling. "I understand, Henry. I do." She left quietly a few minutes later. I sat alone in my living room in the dark, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. Not anger anymore. Not quite forgiveness either. Just pure, clear truth. 2 days later, Tom called me. His voice was quiet and uncertain. "Can we meet somewhere? Just the two of us." We agreed on a neutral coffee shop across town. We sat at a corner table, awkward silence stretching between us like a canyon. Finally, Tom spoke first, staring into his untouched coffee. "I'm insecure, Henry. I've been insecure my entire life. You're naturally smarter than me. You're better at complex thinking. I've always hated that about our relationship." I listened without interrupting, letting him continue. "I thought if I took credit for your work, people would finally see me the way they naturally see you. I thought I could fake it until I became it." His voice cracked with emotion. "I was completely wrong. I hurt you. I hurt myself. I hurt our whole family." I still didn't speak, processing his words. "Can you teach me what you actually do?" he asked, looking up at me with desperate, hopeful eyes. "Can you show me how your mind works?" I looked at him carefully. Really looked at my brother, maybe for the first time in years. "No, Tom. I won't teach you like a student. But I'll consider working with you as equals if you commit to starting over with complete honesty." He broke down right there in the coffee shop, shoulders shaking, tears falling. "Okay," he whispered hoarsely. "Okay, I'll try. I promise I'll really try this time." That following weekend, my father called an emergency family meeting. Tom and I sat together at the table, a unified front for once in our lives. My father cleared his throat nervously, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I need to say something I should have said years ago. I've known for a long time that Henry was the actual brains behind most of our business success." I froze completely, shock washing over me. "What? You knew?" "I stayed silent to keep family peace," he admitted, shame clear in his voice. "I thought it was easier to let Tom take credit than to deal with the conflict. I thought I was protecting the family unity." He paused, struggling with emotion. "I was wrong, son. Terribly wrong. My silence was its own form of betrayal." He looked directly at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Henry. I failed you as a father." My chest felt impossibly tight. His deliberate silence had hurt me even more than Tom's active betrayal. "I'm offering you the controlling vote in the family business," my father said seriously. "Effective immediately. You've earned it." The room erupted in gasps and whispered conversations. I accepted my father's offer, but not to punish Tom. Not for revenge or vindication, but to finally protect my own work and intellectual property. My very first decision as the new controlling partner shocked absolutely everyone in the family. I created a secondary leadership role specifically for Tom. Something real and substantial. Something he could genuinely succeed at with his actual skills. Sales coordination. Client relations. Public presentations. These were things Tom was naturally good at when he wasn't trying to fake technical knowledge. "Why are you doing this for me?" Tom asked later, his voice small and confused. After everything I did to you? I looked at him steadily. Because real leadership isn't about taking credit for other people's work. It's about taking responsibility for building something sustainable together. The room fell completely silent. Tom's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in his life, he genuinely understood the difference. A journalist from a major business publication called me the next week, asking to interview me about my growing consulting success. I agreed cautiously. The article came out 2 weeks later with the headline, "The Quiet Architect: How Henry Dalton Built an Empire from the Shadows." It went viral online almost immediately. My phone exploded with messages. New clients. Partnership opportunities. Speaking invitations. Professional recognition I'd never experienced before. But the best message came from Tom late that night. Just 3 simple words, "I'm proud of you, brother." 3 words that meant absolutely everything to me. The final family gathering felt completely different from every other one. Warm instead of tense. Honest instead of performative. Open instead of guarded. Tom stood up partway through dinner and raised his wine glass high. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice steady and clear. "To Henry, the real brains behind our success. The real leader of this family. The real heart that held us together even when we didn't deserve it." Everyone applauded genuinely. My mother cried openly. My grandfather smiled proudly from his seat. I felt decades of accumulated hurt and resentment physically lifting off my shoulders like a heavy coat. "I have one final announcement to make," I said, standing up. "I'm starting a charitable foundation," I announced to my surprised family. "For older workers who are transitioning into new careers later in life. Using my personal consulting earnings. Not family business money." The room erupted in questions, excitement, pride. Tom hugged me tightly, whispering in my ear. "You made all the real moves while I was taking fake bows," he said emotionally. "And now everyone finally knows the truth." I smiled genuinely. Not triumphant. Not bitter. Just free. Because my entire journey was never really about revenge or vindication. It was about reclaiming myself. And finally, after 38 long years of invisibility, I was truly seen. The foundation launched 3 months later with a ceremony at a downtown hotel. Local news covered it. Former clients donated generously. Tom handled all the public relations perfectly, finally using his real talents. My father spoke at the launch, publicly acknowledging my contributions to the family business for the first time. "My son taught me that silence can be its own betrayal," he said to the crowd. A year later, the foundation had helped 67 people transition careers successfully. I received letters weekly from grateful participants. One woman wrote, "You gave me hope when I thought my best years were behind me." That letter sits framed in my office. Tom and I now work together effectively, both in our proper roles. He handles client relationships brilliantly. I handle strategy and systems. We complement each other when we're honest. At our next family dinner, my grandfather pulled me aside privately. "You know what you did that was most impressive?" he asked. "What, Grandpa?" "You proved that real power isn't taking credit. It's creating value so undeniable that truth reveals itself." I hugged him, understanding finally landing. Tom and I stood together at the foundation's first anniversary event. "I spent 30 years stealing your light," he said quietly. "Now I'm learning to shine with my own." I put my hand on his shoulder. "That's all I ever wanted, Tom. For both of us to shine." As I looked around that room full of people I'd helped, family who finally saw me, and a brother who'd become honest, I realized something profound. My story wasn't about revenge after all. It was about reclaiming dignity, demanding truth, and building something meaningful from years of being invisible. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful truths. And sometimes the greatest victory is simply being seen. If this story touched you, or if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, subscribe. Your story matters. Drop a comment below. Let's lift each other up.